Valve has sold out of VR hardware.
But does that mean that it was a success?
Hot take!
Valve time!
Plenty of people talking about Half-Life Alyx right now because it is what a lot of people are assuming going to be the killer app for VR that we've all been waiting for, right? Yep. And alongside of Half-Life Alyx, of course, a lot of people are talking about Valve's Index hardware.
Yes.
Shane, you know nothing about the Index hardware.
I know nothing about it except for being a purchaser of one very recently. Folks, both Adam and I have played a lot of VR games, and we know that it's divisive and that a lot of people out there don't know enough about VR hardware, but we also know that a lot of people out there are curious about VR hardware, and they're thinking now it might be a success because of the news that just came out that Valve basically sold out of their Valve Index hardware itself.
But does this mean now that VR is saved for the VR enthusiasts? Oh, it's going to be a thing that everyone's doing everywhere. Well, I don't know. I don't know that there's
really
as much.
It's a little complex, right? When you hear this, you automatically assume, oh, that's it. Valve won. They did it. They sold out of their hardware. But the truth of the matter is, folks, this isn't like they're selling really cheap controllers, which they do. Actually, just recently, their Steam controllers, they sold for $5 each because no one was buying them. They just had like a fire sale. But there is this idea that if they sold out of that lot, it would be just a complete win for them. So what we can tell you right now is on the Valve, or on Steam right now, if you were to go to the hardware section and click Valve Index, there are multiple points of purchase for this specific hardware. So there are multiple VR headsets out there, but the one that Valve has produced solely in-house is called the Index. You can get the Valve Index controllers, which essentially are finger tracking controllers that are very unique to Valve. You can also get the Valve Index headset. You can get the Index base station, which you need to basically track all of this stuff in free space, or you can get the Valve Index headset plus the controllers, or there's another bundle where you buy all of that together, and that's the one we bought, the real high one at the top. But as you can see, everything that's here except for the Valve Index base stations are completely sold out. And the very top one that includes the base station, the headset, and the controllers isn't sold out. But we have behind-the-scenes knowledge on that because as soon as Valve announced Half-Life Alyx, I decided to put down an order for the most elite set. Well,
I don't believe you. I don't see your order number, and I don't see where it's shipping to.
Yeah, no one needs to see the order number but me and Valve. Okay, let's make that clear. Anyway, so the order number here, I placed the order on on November 21st, and that was supposed to arrive in 5 to 8 days or 5 to 6 days or whatever, but it has not shipped. And on the bottom, you can see where it says shipping status processing. Delivery dates are expected, the delivery delays are expected due to high order volume. We'll ship your order as soon as we can, send you an email with track information once that happens. So basically, they sold so many so fast that they likely weren't expecting to sell as much, and they've basically lost their stock. Now, does that mean they had millions in stock ready to go? Probably not.
Yeah, and most likely not. And we're not sure. We don't have those numbers. We won't have those numbers for a while. But what we can look at right now is like whether or not there's like this alone could be a huge turning point for VR, or if VR even has that much of a user base right now. So we're looking at some numbers. As of October 2019, the amount of gamers on Steam that use a VR headset on their PC, it's only about 1.03%.
I know.
So there's a lot of work to be done here to sort of grow the community. Right now, it still feels very niche, and a lot of people that are pointing to like VR tech as being the next 3D TV tech, they may not be that far off.
No, I don't think they're fall off at all.
But the experience of wearing a VR headset, I think, is far different than just simply having 3D on a television.
Yeah, I agree. So right now, with what we know with Valve, there are 90 million concurrent users. So that means at this current moment, there are 90 people on
90 million people
90 people
playing on Steam.
90 million people playing on Steam. Of that number, about 1% own VR headsets. Now, when we talk about owning VR headsets, we're not talking about Index alone.
That's right.
We're talking about the HTC Vive, the company that Valve worked with originally to create this VR headset system that they've initialized years prior. We're talking about Oculus. We're talking about Windows Mixed Reality. Lots of different headsets. The only one we're not talking about is PlayStation VR, because that's not one that they track. But that's important because PlayStation VR is one of the most successful standalone VR headsets you can get. When I say standalone, I mean like it's not connected to a PC. It's actually connected to the PlayStation 4. True standalone is the Oculus Quest and the Oculus Go, which, by the way, the Oculus Quest can be used with a PC utilizing a USB cord, and it's very complex and very difficult, which, by the way, is the problem we're dealing with here.
And that's where the PS4 can kind of clean up a bit. So they can make a product that's it's not the easiest thing. There's a lot of cables and whatnot, but the instructions are pretty simple. And all of the headsets across the board with your PS4 and your PS4 Pros work pretty well in the same way, right? So the PlayStation VR has outsold like the other platforms combined, as I'm to understand, right? They've sold 4.7 million headsets, and that's pretty incredible.
Yes, it is. Now, look, folks, I know it gets a little bit complex to know what kind of VR headset people are going for right now, but what we can tell you for pretty much like certainty is that what Valve has done is they've increased a lot of people's attention of what VR is all about. When we talk about video game consoles, we usually talk about like a killer app, a killer game that drives people to it. For Nintendo, it could be Pokemon, it could be Zelda, it could be Mario.
Yeah, Super Mario Bros. On the NES was the killer app for the NES way back when. You can point to any, popular gaming console. There's usually one game that, really drives traffic to the platform.
Yeah, for instance, it doesn't even have to be based upon a concept of control that people understand. The Wii sold well, not because of a billion other things that they released on the platform over time, but it was because when the Wii was sold, it was bundled with Wii Sports.
That's right.
And Wii Sports was an easy way for a bunch of people to get in and just play the games. So suddenly Nintendo found themselves in a great position that they didn't know how to really manage, and it kind of fumbled when it came to the Wii U. But that doesn't mean that we're going to see the exact same kind of instant success with VR, because the Wii did not cost over $1,000 to get with the whole bundle, okay?
And we got to take this into consideration. The Wii was something where your whole family was watching grandma play bowling, right?
Yeah.
But with a VR headset, you got to take into consideration that you're shutting out the rest of the world. It's not a communal sort of experience. So that kind of turns off a lot of people that maybe are buying or purchasing this with like a family. They don't want to be cut off from everyone else. Right?
And when you actually buy the Wii and you plug it up to your TV, you're good to go. When you buy a Valve Index, you still need a pretty powerful computer to run the Valve Index properly. And now, this is also an issue when it comes to the other VR headsets that are on the market. Like, why aren't we seeing the same kind of sales numbers come out of Oculus, which realistically, they've been in the game of VR longer than everyone else. Well, there's
a lot of reasons, and I would point to the sales of PSVR being much better than the sort of PC competitors or the whole whatever, all of the rest of VR is because PlayStation can laser focus on advertising their product specifically for their console. We see commercials for PlayStation Worlds, for example. There's a lot of they put a lot of weight behind the budget. Whereas with Oculus and with the HTC Vive, it feels like word is it's more like a word of mouth thing than a huge advertising budget. PlayStation, they put a lot of effort into their device.
And like, if you bought a PlayStation, you probably like video games. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But Oculus is a little bit different. See, Oculus had the development kit 1 that came out, then there was a development kit 2, then there was the Oculus Rift, just the Rift, then there was the Rift S, then there's the Go.
You're already losing 70% of the audience right now. The eyes glaze over, right? So I think what we're pretty much pointing to, like, we're talking about how the VR environment isn't the biggest right now. The community they love the people that love these things really do, but we're talking about growth.
Yes.
So if we want VR or VR to really get legs, we have this thing that is likely going to be a killer app, or at least a lot of people are going to be looking at Half-Life Alyx as being the next big thing in VR. A lot of people paying attention. It needs to be on a platform or coming to platforms that people will just go to, right?
Yes.
And right now, the most easily accessible platform, it seems, or at least the one that people are jumping on board with, is the PSVR.
Yep, I agree.
So far, the game has not been announced for the PSVR.
Yes.
So what conclusion should we be coming to at this point?
Well, it's a little scary because, folks, look, just because they sold out of whatever lot they sold out of, even if they sold 100% of all the existing VR headsets, and they double that, they would only be at 2%. Now, 2% of 90 million is still quite a big number, but it's nowhere near the number they needed to be to have a successful video game launch. I mean, Valve knows this better than all others. I imagine that they don't really care too much about how much money this game generates because, remember, they own Steam, so everyone is making a lot of money off Steam, but Valve is making the most. But when it comes to PlayStation VR, that's just where everybody is right now. That's where the most gamers are with VR. So if they could get that on the PlayStation platform, I think it could really, I mean, this is mirroring things we talked about yesterday again, but like it really makes sense. Look, with the Oculus Go, I know a lot of people out there are talking about Oculus Go and Quest. Those are standalone headsets. You don't need anything else. I think a cell phone. But Quest isn't that powerful. Plus, people are confused about Quest. Buy a game on Quest, doesn't work on Go, doesn't work on Rift. Do you know what I mean? There's this idea that they've already created 3 fractured users on the Quest, or on the Oculus platform alone. But with PlayStation, if you have a headset and you got a PlayStation, you're good. That's it. That's easier than anyone else has it right now. You don't have to have a weird-ass cell phone. You don't have to have anything. As long as you've got a PlayStation 4 and a headset, you can play that game. And I think that's what they got to do.
And we know that that's moving forward to the PS5. And I think another thing that would be very smart to do, and I don't know how the heck they'd be able to make this happen, but I mean, we have new hardware that's just around the corner. If there's a way to take the Index, whether it's the controllers or the headset or something, and combine that with the PlayStation 5, that could be a smart move. I don't know. We still don't know what that hardware is going to look like or how the Index controllers would be able to communicate with other devices.
Okay, so the theory could be that if you wanted to get the Index to work on the PlayStation,
you need the
which,
lighthouses too, right?
You do.
Yeah.
I do not agree with this concept. I think it's a little bit too crazy because you're literally buying a headset that is more expensive than the PlayStation at that point. But
if you just wanted the controllers,
let's think about that.
Because the controllers are really good.
So there's a breakout box for PlayStation VR right now that exists for the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro. That breakout box has some processing and stuff in it. It's not massive, but it has certain things in it. That breakout box would need to be the same idea here. You need it to basically connect all those pieces. I honestly think that there is a way for them to do it. And of any of the companies that would be willing, we've already heard from Microsoft. Xbox and Microsoft, they are like, we are not doing VR, despite the fact Microsoft actually is kind of doing MR and augmented reality. But if Sony were to get in bed with them, I think they could. It's just, boy, I think they have to use the initial hardware. I know there's a lot of people out there that assume that Half-Life Alyx is going to be a walk-around experience where you basically can move around and stuff, which apparently is true, but they've also stated that Half-Life Alyx can be played sitting down, which for PlayStation, that's the best way to have those games working. So, I mean, it's a little confusing. It's a little weird. If anyone out there is expecting Half-Life Alyx to kind of revolutionize the way people think about VR, it is possible, but they've got a huge, like, kind of like path to climb up. It's not like just one game, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just Half-Life Alyx sells it. Now you got another game. Now you need another game. A platform can't exist off the success of one big franchise.
Though the one big franchise, Half-Life Alyx, it can open the door, I guess, is what you're saying, right? It can get a lot of people in there, but yeah, we will need to see like continued sort of trickles. Maybe there's some great ideas in Half-Life Alyx that other developers are going to like kind of latch on to. Oh, we didn't know we could do that. And then VR becomes even more of a thing that people want to get into because of it.
Yeah, you know, like VR is fractured. Whether you are in the market right now or know it or don't, there are so many games available on so many different VR headsets that are unique to certain VR headsets. For instance, what is one of the best VR games we've ever played on the PlayStation VR?
Are you talking about Astrobot?
Astrobot. This is one of the best platformer games I've ever played. It just happens to be in VR. It's something you would probably expect to come from Nintendo. That's how good it is. The problem, though, is you can only play it on PlayStation VR. If Sony were to work with Valve and work with Oculus and all these other companies and allow all these games to exist on other platforms so that VR can grow as a community, that would be better.
That's true.
Valve is taking an initiative here by allowing a lot of different VR headsets to work with this game. So it's not just their own stuff, but I think they got to go a little bit further and go, look, Sony, We really want this to work.
Yep.
I mean, for all we know, they've already had that conversation. They're going to announce it later on, but it's got to be something that happens.
It's funny that you mention all this because I remember when the Oculus Rift was first being showcased, they're talking about how they wanted this to be, oh no, we're not going to have a walled off sort of ecosystem. We want everyone to be talking and all developers to be on board and different headsets and everything.
Yeah.
And it seems like maybe now this is happening, but it's not necessarily with Oculus. Maybe Valve is the first company that's like, no, like if we want this thing to work, we have to come together.
Yeah.
And hopefully they do come together and we see it trickled out into whether it's using the PS4's headset, which I don't know, but using the next step of tech in that Sony branch, I think is probably the best way.
Yeah, I think so too.
Grow.
Well, folks, what do you think? Does this make you excited about VR in the slightest, or do you really feel that even though they sold all of their units, they're probably still not going to have the success everyone's hoping they'd have?
Yeah, let us know in the comments below.